So I'm here with interview number two. Today we have Gordon Dalton. He's an artist. The guy a lot of people in Middlesbrough knows. He formerly headed up Creative Factory, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about his practice and how things are going for him. So Gordon, do you want to introduce yourself? Oh, look,
Yeah, I have a lot. Yeah, nice to see you. So yeah, my name's Gordon. I'm a painter, mostly. Moved back to Teesside a couple of years ago with my family, and just cracked on. Really, just it was the best move we've ever made. It's obviously there was work stuff with Creative Factory, but in the meantime, mainly because I kind of go from being really, really lazy to being like really workaholic. So I'm kind of paint a lot at night anyway. So just try to keep a handle on things. I've had a couple of shows in Middlesbrough since I moved back, which has been brilliant, including Pineapple Black. And I've got a rescheduled show at the Auxiliary solo show hopefully in September.
So I know being an artist has taken you all over the country and all over the world, in fact. Could you tell me a little bit about, what led you down this path, how you got started as an artist?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that massively different from a lot of people, but it all just seems a long time ago. But like kind of most people my age, leaving school in the mid-80s, it was already kind of it's kind of set out for a lot of people, especially kind of. It felt it's kind of panned out for kind of blokes up north to either kind of like get try and get an apprenticeship or a trade, or not have any work at all. So I left school at 16. I'd initially joined the Navy, which thankfully I failed loads of exams. But I was going to go back to the Navy, but I think the summer after I'd left school, I got like a small apprenticeship. Well, I say apprenticeship, it was YTS back in. I got like one of those YTS things, and so I was working 4 days a week as an engineer, or learning to be an engineer, and then going like day release to various colleges, and then that finished, and got a job with another firm, and we were building and fixing generators and stuff like that, like mobile generators. So a lot of the work was going to be overseas, but I kind of say it, but it's a long time ago. I've kind of probably I've maybe made this story more dramatic than it is. Like the Gulf War was coming, the first Gulf War, and they cancelled all contracts, and I probably was like the happiest person that there was a war coming, because I was shit at it. I mean, like I would struggle to wire a plug these days. So they said, I'll go back to college for another year, and I really didn't want to do that. And then I pretty much say in nearly every lecture for students or anything like that, that our block, the engineering block, was next to the art block. And a lot of my mates, it was kind of my main other thing was music, or just putting stuff on. I don't even know what you'd call it, but we just put stuff on. And so I kind of looked around and thought maybe I could do something music-wise. I went for an interview at Hartlepool for the it wasn't a drama course. It was more technical than that. Stage lighting and all that. And they said, "Oh, you could probably do all this. Why don't you just go to foundation in Middlesbrough?" And then that was it. It was like I kind of like, even though I felt a bit out of place, because like a few of my mates were into like music and slightly more alternative scene. So I kind of, there was part of me like felt massively at home. And then I wanted to travel. And I went to Cardiff mainly because the lecturer had said it was like Teesside, which it is. South Wales is like northeast, but they had a fellowship or a student exchange program with America, and that was the reason I wanted to do that. And it was like, I didn't know what being an artist was, but I wanted to go to America more than anything. I'd really enjoyed the foundation. I guess the one thing that was different that was like my first time out of the northeast, really going to Cardiff. So it was it wasn't kind of the same. I was like, there was a lot of just posh kids. So, and I'm rocking up in like a Borough shirt on my first day at college. It was like, and I mean, it's kind of weird. I wouldn't change it. The thing, because like you said, I've managed to. I went to America. I've been back a few times, and I kind of do what I do now. But yeah, I've been really lucky. Like loads aren't. I think, I got a grant. People don't get grants. I think I was one of the last years to get a grant. It kind of got me back, and then I've lived all over the UK, mostly in Scotland and Wales, and then had the opportunity to come back. So, and that's like 20. What's that now? That's like 26 years to leave Middlesbrough, kind of like desperate to get out of there, and then 26 years later, I find myself desperate to come back. And I'm really glad I did.
So coming on to your practice itself, these landscapes you paint and these scenes, and they're quite esoteric, and you're not an artist who kind of, for me, you're not trying to document your surroundings, more maybe offering an alternative to them. Could you talk a little bit about that and what the driving force is behind the pieces that you're painting?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I'd come back from America and was definitely wanting to paint, but you're always kind of clawing around for a subject matter, and then a few years later, I did end up back in the Northeast. I was working with Artist Newsletter and being a part-time MA at Northumbria. And I went into that MA still painting, but they were kind of, I guess they were kind of like, I think I'd kind of started to be informed by like a lot of the artist-led stuff that was going on there. I was seeing a lot more different kind of work, and then the MA just like knocked 7 bags of shit at me, to be honest. It was just like really theory-led. I didn't make any work for 2 years, and then kind of just got back into putting on events and like in disused buildings, and that whole kind of artist-led scene from about 96 to about 2004, like painting didn't really feel it had a space within that, because you were just trying stuff out, and you were working with people you'd never met before, or just random people. We didn't, it wasn't collaboration. We wouldn't talk like that. It was just, let's do something. So the work kind of, I was still painting every day, like doing these just kind of like almost like watercolors, but I didn't ever show them I didn't show them to anybody. And then I was maybe there was a lot of stuff in the paintings that it's almost like they'd fallen out of the paintings and become like random found objects. And then I kind of did all right. I exhibited those, and that was kind of interesting. Kind of made a couple of films, but I was always like kind of painting, but not exhibiting painting. And then they started to reappear maybe like 6 years ago, kind of like pretty disillusioned by what I was making. And just started, I never really thought I'd exhibit again after about 2005, because I was coming out and painting either like flowers or random objects. The paintings then were kind of like almost like all the stuff that I'd had piled up in a wardrobe somewhere. And then maybe 5 years ago, I started to strip that out, and I kind of found underneath there was kind of a lot of there was kind of a lot of landscapes. There was, and a lot of them were kind of based on either memories of home or memories of places I'd been, but not that, as you said, not kind of like directly descriptive, but they were all kind of like melded together into kind of like this, almost like a sense of somewhere else. And then, you try and be a bit more honest with yourself. And there was a kind of, if there were going to be landscapes, I was happy for them to be landscapes. And I didn't really care what people thought, that, they weren't particularly fashionable, but that, or whatever is deemed as cool. But I was so disillusioned with like the whole art world anyway. I didn't give a fuck about it. I was like, I'll find a place for this. But some people took to them, and kind of that idea of like not being part of like a bigger, supposedly bigger machine and just doing what you wanted is, I kind of feel like now I'm back to where I was before even I went to art school. I'm that kid kind of sat listening to music, drawing in the bedroom with a biro and some Tipp-Ex. Obviously I'm a bit more knowing now, but I don't try to be. I'm trying to build up this idea of what it's like to live somewhere, especially since I've moved back. I'm kind of trying to focus it in on more of a, because it's kind of easy to sell it. It's like post-industrial, but I kind of like, I grew up in like more like East Cleveland way. So, and just coming back, and it's like you find all the stuff that was there already. So they're kind of a little bit about kind of like just looking. They've always been about looking a bit longer, but there's just like so much amazing stuff that just gets overlooked because it's Teesside and the perceptions of what that might be. And so there's an element about that. There's a bit of like kind of more local stuff, but saying that, like, I'm always trying to trick myself, so you can get a flamingo turn up or some random objects, and it's just kind of, you're just trying to make yourself paint, and that's all I want to do. It's as simple as that. And then with the networks you build up and people you meet other like-minded people. So sorry, that was really rambling.
It's all good. It's all good. And what you say is true. Like, that's how it should be. You want to be back to being that kind of teenager, just, working and being loose and being free. I firmly believe in that. So coming on to lockdown, I mean, from my perspective, you seem to be an artist who's adapted to lockdown well and thrived. You've embraced technology. You've had digital exhibitions. You've been active within the Artist Support Pledge, and you're planning shows for the post-lockdown world. So, what's your take on that? How have you managed to adapt so well to lockdown, and what else have you got that you're excited about when lockdown's lifted fully?
I don't know if I am excited about it being lifted. It's I mean, obviously there's bigger things, and but in some ways, it's kind of apart from like the stress and families and all the other stuff. It's kind of like it's given me like some focus. I lost my job halfway through, and I've got my youngest is still at home. My wife works at the hospital, so our routines kind of, you know, I was always painting every day, even if it was just like some small thing that might not go anywhere. I was always trying to build up some kind of. I think I've talked about it being like kind of some visual muscle memory, but and I've always worked on either very small scale or quite large for me. So I lost my studio at the beginning, and then so I've just been working at home at the table, and it kind of reinforced that kind of sat in your bedroom idea, kind of. So kind of that's been a constant. Yeah, and the digital stuff was kind of already booked in and planned, but that's been an amazing. It's like one of the best shows I've ever had, and I didn't have to go stand there and feel really uncomfortable in the corner, kind of sweating. But and so that show's been, if you could virtually tour a show, it's a gallery in France took it. Looking at doing a similar thing in America. Yeah, just focus and concentration and that kind of work ethic, which is what I try to keep up most of the time. I don't paint exclusively for exhibitions. So I wouldn't say I've enjoyed it, but I've been able to kind of knuckle down and use the time to kind of maybe like just focus more on the things that I'm interested in and not get distracted by other stuff. And it's really difficult for everybody. And Artist Support Pledge has been amazing for me and loads of artists. I kind of hoped I would make the first target, which I did, and then I've been able to buy some other people's works and support a few people. But the main thing is just that kind of just the concentration, that work ethic, and realizing that, well, via Matthew Burrow's idea, is that there's more people out there who like what you do, and it's not put through any taste making or anything. It's people see it and genuinely just think yes, and it's kind of to have work going out to America, Australia, Singapore, all over the world, from people who've just seen like a little square image on Instagram. But you know, that's kind of, it's just more democratic than it kind of like the art world wants it to be. So it's, you know, just I've played the game, I've played the art, you know, tried to be as generous as I can with it. So yeah, I mean, I am looking forward to seeing paintings in the flesh, like in a gallery, with people. But I'm kind of, I know for a lot of people, it's kind of given, it's a kind of raised that like, how do they want to work? Like, how do they want to have their practice? And so I'm still trying to figure that out. Going to have the show in Middlesbrough, which I can't wait. And got a few shows at the end of the year, and then see what happens. I mean, like, I'm in no rush to. I guess I always used to talk about kind of there's other ways of doing it, and I think the lockdown has given people some awareness that there's not just one way and not one idea of success. So in that way, lockdown's been useful. So, yeah.
Great. Well, always lovely talking to you and listening to you talk about your practice. It's been brilliant.
I didn't swear much.
Well, take care of yourself, Gordon. Cheers.
Hey man, good to see you.
Yeah, you
When,
too.
when are you planning on? When is the plan? You know, open the gallery?
So we're open Saturdays at present.
Yeah.
And then I think the 31st of the month we've got the new Two Huts show.
Right.
He's from Saltburn, Two Huts. You might